Welcome to the Pixel Retentive Podcast, where we, a business owner and an artist, discuss the business of art and the art of business. Hey friends, I'm Carl, founder of Epic Made.
And I'm Ross, creative director at Epic Made, and we're the hosts of the Pixel Retentive Podcast, where we share our thoughts on creativity, art, and business. Past guests include Ruth Newberry of Cream, Ben Burns of The Future, and Ryan Summers of Built.
We're forever grateful for the supporters of our podcast, and we're always looking for more sponsors. That said, Pixel Retentive is brought to you by the creative gurus at Epic Made. Epic Made is a team of strategists and artists who excel in visual storytelling. Our studio crafts unforgettable animation and illustration that not only captivates your audience, but also drives tangible business results. We specialize in engaging imaginative, pop culture savvy audiences with beloved clients like Nickelodeon, WWE, and Sci-Fi. Visit getepicmade.com and let's collaborate on your next creative campaign.
And with us today, we have Matt Vojacek. Matt is the founder and creative director of a Columbus, Ohio studio called Made by Things. He's also the director of a low-graph conference called Making Midwest. Welcome, Matt. Pleasure to have you.
Hey, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. It's fun.
Yeah, man. I'm glad to have you here. So, look, we want our audience to get a chance to get to know you a little bit better before we get into the episode. So, tell us how long you've been in your industry and the project you're most proud of so far.
Ooh, you're right. Okay, so let's see. For me, this all started, I say 2008. So that puts us at around 15 years, I think.
Nice.
If my math is correct here. That's crazy to think about. That's not right.
Yeah, sounds about right. You still feel young, but, the numbers keep adding up, right?
Right, yeah. I mean, you're constantly learning just so much stuff every single day, and you kind of never feel like you really figured anything out. And then you look at the calendar and you're like, oh, I thought that by 15 years in, I feel like I would have a good grasp on all this stuff and just know exactly what I was doing. Not true.
Yeah, people call me a professional now. That's
right.
Wait, I'm being looked up to for advice. Shit, I got to get it together.
Honestly, that is one of the weirdest things when I start getting messages. I mean, it probably happened maybe 3-4 years ago, and I was like, oh, I'm still trying to figure things out. You're asking me. I don't know. Yeah. So my favorite project. Oh, well, I guess for this one right here, I'd have to go with. There's 2 short films that I made. One of them was with 2 friends when we were in college, called CMYK. We basically had 2 semesters to be able to work on it, and it's a whole thing. It doesn't look amazing today, but at the time in 2007, 2008, it was pretty cool. But that was a life-changing project, honestly. That was the moment where sorry if you can hear my dog back here. That was one of those moments where I realized okay, this is what I want to do. I want to be able to make films like this. So for me, it was I don't know, going forward, it's okay, I'll do whatever I have to right now, but everything that I do, I want it to be a step in this direction of being able to kind of create films, but for brands, right? So that was 2008. And then the second one is another short film that we made called Where Are You Now? Pretty personal story. I can get into it if you want me to, but I recommend everybody, you can check it out on our website. Made that in 2019.
Nice.
Yeah, one of those, like I said, it's really personal. It's just the most personal thing that I could have ever made, and it just really helped in healing and just talks about grief. And I don't know, one of those things where you do it because you're okay, personally, I think this could help, but also I want to tell this story. And after you do it, there's just, once we released it was almost I don't want to say part of that grief going away necessarily, because it doesn't really go away, but it's one of these things where I just learned how to accept it better, the moment that we sort of launched this short film into the world. So yeah, I'd say that those 2 things right there are my favorite projects.
Well, Thanks for sharing that, man. I been on a similar journey. I lost my father in 2016 and started an entire posthumous collaborative art campaign thing where I just took all of his art and made it digital after I put like a shitload of it on my ceiling and all around my house. And like my dad was a crazy artist. But then I started a live stream and I just like every week I make new art with his old art and like take it and like collaborate with it, make NFTs from it and all kinds of cool shit to like immortalize who he was. And it was that same trip of just like helping to soothe my grief and like art therapy. So I assume you lost a family member or something, but
Yeah, I lost a daughter. She was 10 days old. And it's one of the hardest things to ever go through, right? Like everyone's always like, I can't even imagine. I'm like, I went through it and I can't even imagine. Like,
yeah.
But I mean, you're right though. Like you turn to the things that you sort of know best. Like to me, like making stuff was never super therapeutic before that. But I realized that I was like, okay, well, I got to do something. And for me, honestly, it was like I need to tell this story because I know that other people go through this kind of stuff too. And not that I don't have any advice for anyone going through anything like that, a loss of any sort. There's really nothing.
Yeah, it's not so much about it, Molly. It's an expression of the situation that you hope resonates with other people, basically.
Right.
You're not trying to preach anything. You're just you did it for you, and you hope that other people resonate with the story that you wanted to tell for you.
Right. You know, it was the kind of thing where everyone was almost afraid to like bring it up or talk about it. Like they thought it wasn't something that was on my mind 24/7 already.
Right.
And I was like, no. Like there's like, you can't like make me feel worse.
Right. You're not going to dredge it up.
Right. Yeah. So for me, I was like, you know what? I need everyone, even just family members, to know, like, I don't know, to be able to tell this story in a way that like there is hope even in grief. So for me, I was like, it's not like it's one of the worst things in your life that could ever happen, but at the same time, the experience that we had with her, even in that short time, I feel like there's just a lot of hope in there. I can't explain it. That's why I decided to just make a short film about it. But and that's what I wanted. That's what I want her to be remembered as the symbol of hope rather than tragedy.
Fucking beautiful. It's beautiful.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
For you, man. That's yeah. Whew. Certain deep.
We're getting into it.
It is. Yeah. Spirit, and we are about to cry. So.
Yeah, but it's okay. Hey, look, real men cry. That's what I say. You know, I love it. Yep. Yeah, dude.
I'll definitely take a look at that. You said it's on the website, the We Make website.
Yep. Yeah, it's called Where Are You Now?
Yeah, we'll drop a link to that in the comments too. So
cool.
Or the whatever it's called, description. Beautiful. I can't wait to check that out, man. Thanks for sharing. All right, so let's I figured, Ross, you were saying you were going through Made by Things website. We've seen, you saw that they had like a really detailed description of their process. So I think we're going to kind of circle in on that and see, like, you know, maybe compare notes about how we do things versus how you guys do things and how we kind of all arrived at our processes. So
yeah, I liked the candidness of the process, how you laid out the process on the website. We're kind of in the middle of remaking our website and redefining kind of what Epic Made wants to be from like a procedures and offer sort of standpoint, right? And we've sort of landed on a heavy focus on narrative storytelling and sort of creating an entertainment infused marketing platform, right? Like something where we're using the bones and sort of accoutrements of traditional movie craft, filmmaking, you know, TV, comics, things like that in advertising, rather than, you know, the usual marketing first metrics. And so we're sort of in the middle of kind of figuring out what the process for that should look like. And I figured it'd be cool to, you know, compare notes and just kind of see what we're both currently doing that might be similar, or what we're both doing that might be different. Just have a discussion about what it's like running a creative studio, and we both do it, and what it's like kind of onboarding a client from that.
Yeah, if I just jump into there, I mean, like that's one of those things that people probably don't think about as often.
Mhm.
But for me, just having a process in general, like once I started adding team members, even just before that, like I knew it would be important once I had team members, but I was like, all right, I need to be able to like have a way, like when it was just me, it was always like, okay, this feels like the right thing to do. This feels right. And there is an art to like knowing what to do, but at the same time, it's a lot harder to have that kind of style of things whenever you have a team, especially when you're bringing in clients and you're treating each one a little bit differently. So defining a process both internally and externally was a really, really important part. And when I started doing it, this is when I started using Notion. So this is probably like, it may have been 2018, 19, somewhere around there. I was an early adopter. But for me, I was like, oh, this is cool. And I'll just write a little bit of this stuff. And next thing I knew, I had like, I don't know, there had been at least 100 pages of just stuff. And I was like, okay, I didn't know that I had like that much stuff in my head that sort of needed to be worked out. So yeah, the first part was, all right, let's figure out what our internal process is and how do we make our best work? And ultimately, like that was the question right there, that until you know how you do your own best work, you can't really define what that process is, because at that point it's sort of like, I would say it's sort of like using a contract template on Google, right? Where you're like, okay, like this all would work for me in general. But until you really go through it and you see like, ooh, here are some of like the legal issues that might pop up. Like you can't really get in there and start making adjustments yourself or having a lawyer to help you with those things, which I recommend.
Yeah, always.
So at first it was like, okay, well, here are is the process from all of the books on motion design, right? And you're just like, okay, well, this is my process then, until you get a little bit farther into it and you start to realize, ooh, like that doesn't work for me specifically. I actually want to switch these, or we need to add another part of the process here. So internally we have probably 20, I don't know, it has to be maybe 25 steps that we sort of like look at. I don't show this to anybody, right?
Right. Yeah.
But it wasn't until writing all that stuff down where you start to realize, okay, now from a client perspective, how do we need to like talk about our process, right?
Right. Yeah. You can give them a list of 25 internal things you guys do, and hope that they don't run away.
Right.
And I think that with putting that you said earlier, the process kind of needs to be the average, like an average of the best possible outcome, right? Like you can sort of, I think most artists have a way of facilitating their best work, and it works maybe 60-70% of the time, right? Because it's kind of a crapshoot in terms of like no matter how, I'm a big proponent of art is math, right? Like it's basically formulaic in some capacity. You can build constraints around creativity and strategy around creativity and gain some level of consistency. But it isn't the same kind of consistency as like accounting, right?
Right.
So you have to kind of take whatever you need to do and whatever your team needs to do and find the average for what produces the best work in this environment, in that, with that team, with those people. And you take, you make consistent the stuff that works consistently, and then you throw away the stuff that doesn't have a high success rate, even though it might be helpful or useful.
One of the things that I always say is there's two different types of creatives. There is the engineer and there is the artist. Mm-hmm. And it's a spectrum, right? And for me, I I consider myself very heavily towards the engineer side of being a creative, right? Where everything does need to have a formula for me for it to make sense.
You're looking at the both ends of the spectrum currently.
I'm so far up the artist side that like I hate structure, and I had Ross literally, like, we say this probably on every other episode, but Ross fired me from the art team, like, I don't know how, like 6 years ago now, like from my own company. Just he's like, look, dude, we can't make money with this crazy artsy fartsy shit you want to do on every project. So like, and he was right. But, so
it takes both sides though. Like that's the coolest part about building a team is like I'm doing interviews and I'm like, where does this person fall exactly on this scale? Because it's not always like, okay, let's just get the best person that we can find, right? It's okay, well, we need somebody that's going to work really well with the team that we sort of have.
Yep.
It's this sort of living organism, right? That every time you put another person into it, you want to make sure yeah, it does. And like it's kind of fun in a way to think of it like that.
It is.
But knowing that also changes like how I am as a leader with every person on our team. Like I know where everyone sort of falls on that scale. And I'm like, for some people I could be like, let's try something with like maybe this inspiration right here. Like, and then they're just like, oh, got it. Like, I'm just going to run with this. And then some other people, I'm like, all right, maybe first start by making a grid for this and like laying down some sort of foundation of like, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's little things like that again, just, it's really exciting, but
I mean, as the creative director for Epic Made, working with a bunch of different artists, I run into that problem all the time where you do kind of have to feel out how someone works, because while I think the end result, like the guiding hands can have a strategy and have like an idea of where something is going, when dealing with someone who's ultimately producing something from nothing, from their head, you do have to kind of take somewhat of a backseat to how they work best, and what like you said, some people work really well with like here's the vibe, right? Like this is the general inspiration, right, kind of what I'm thinking, and then some people are like, I need you to tell me what you want done, right? And I'll do it. I'm a technician. I'll do it to the best degree that I can do it, but someone needs to give me as strict a creative brief as humanly possible so that I don't bounce around and deviate from the plan, and I don't have to like amalgamate inspiration.
Right.
And like that, I think both artists have their place on a team, and usually it's back, right? The dreamer, like bigger inspiration, artistic vision people tends to be earlier in the process, and then it kind of dips. It narrows into technician work as the process moves along. At least that's what I found.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. I guess that's kind of the other thing is like, and I don't control how any one person on team like does exactly like their thing.
Right.
So like I'm always like, hey, you need to have your process, and then I need to like generally understand that so that I can figure out how that works in our overall process. Right. And then again, now that shifts to like the client side, like, okay, what is that process like, and how should they be involved? And I mean, in general, people don't like, clients don't want to be in a bunch of meetings all the time, right? So sorry, the kids are like, this is a disaster over here.
Literally can't hear anything.
Okay, good. Zoom does great noise canceling. No stress at all.
It just it changes though too over time, right? I would say like once every year or two, we're sort of like, okay, like based on what we found on like this project that we worked on, like we actually need to change our process a little bit or add something in it or take this thing out. And because of that, it then changes, again, our outward facing process and what that's going to be.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense. I realized early on in building this team, we've been in business a similar amount of time as you. I think I started in 2006, and then I think I brought my first employee on in like 2011 or something. Oh, cool. I was on the slow and steady method early on. But anyways, Yeah, like people, I found like trying to force a creative person to work in a space that you think works. Like this is the box of like, this like whole corporate mindset, like is just trash for our industry. Like I don't think
Right.
that's the play at all. Like we've been remote working and doing, having the team kind of dispersed all over, at least in Virginia for since the beginning. And we did have an office for a while, but like after COVID, like I just don't ever see a reason to have an office and force people into these little, like you got to work here from 9 to 5 at this kind of thing. Like if I told Ross he's got to be out of space from this time, he'd be like, "What? Why are we wasting my life driving and gas and
Right.
parking and like?" And then he'd just be pissed off all the time. So,
I had a person on my team that was like, "Hey, I had a dream last night that you decided to make everyone like work from your office in Columbus, and we have people scattered all over the country." And
right.
I was like, "That's really funny." Like, well, what? Like, it's so funny that you're like worried about that because I'm like, truthfully, I'm like, yeah, I would love that, honestly. Like, I would love to have an office and people come into it just whenever I feel like, I guess. But like, I'm like, I can't do that. Like, everyone would say no. Like,
Right.
like it's not really up to me. Like, and that's fine. Like, I'm totally cool with that. Like, ultimately, I want to try to create the most comfortable environment I possibly can for everyone on the team so that they can do their absolute best work.
100%.
I always tell everyone on the team, like, my job is to remove all of the roadblocks. In this case, it might be a literal one where it's like you driving in and out of work every day. Like, but I'm like, no, as long as like everyone's cool with this stuff and can, I don't know, keep making great work. I can't do anything about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I like to like. Every time we onboard a new artist, one of the things that I tell them is that like as long as the work is up to Epic made standards, client standards, and as long as it's on time, I don't really care I don't care if you work at 2 a.m. I don't care if you work on the weekends, even though the studio's closed on the weekends. Like if that's where you find the best time to work, go for it. Like I'll answer you on Monday.
Yep.
Like it's just one of those things that I think in our industry it's respected more than most more administrative careers like accounting, insurance, healthcare, things like that, where even if you don't have a direct client to deal with, like you're not a retail location where like you need to be open
Right.
this hour, like I think that it's typically understood by most corporate world that like you work 9 to 5, you come to a location, it somehow like prevents distraction of some sort, I think it's weird that nobody recognizes how much resentment it builds by comparison. I mean, there's some things you can't do remotely, right? But if you can, I think people would be surprised to learn how much restraint and how much like courtesy people have, and honestly, how much physical time it actually takes to do the job they're given compared to how much they're just kind of like wanting to go home. And that kind of internal frustration eventually builds into fuck this place, right? Like, like it if you're spending even 3 hours of your day, like, man, I wish I could just fucking take a nap because I'm done with my work and I don't need to be here anymore. Like, eventually you're just gonna do something else.
100%. And that's where I'm like, take the nap.
Yeah,
Like, just let us know that you're going to be back in a little bit. That's my whole thing is like, yeah, we do have some set meetings throughout the week.
yeah, of course.
And every so often I'm like, all right, we're talking a little bit too much on Slack. Like, clearly we need to like have a call here and make sure we're all on the same page rather than wasting an hour doing this. I'd rather have a 10-minute call.
Ross does it all the time.
Yeah, that might I want that written on my tombstone. Like if
like 6 messages in, Ross is just hitting the huddle button. Like, he's like,
yeah.
no, we're not doing this. Like,
right. Yeah, no, I like that. And you're right though. Like the corporate world is generally like, okay, no, like we're back in offices now, and I think that they know that it's not right, but they're still doing it because it just makes certain things a lot easier for them.
Well, it makes control a lot easier.
They want to own you.
That's it right there.
They want to own you. Like you're on a W-2, we own you, right? Like that's the mindset, and I hate it. Like my last job, I quit in 2007, so I started this in 2006. I was doing the little, work myself out thing, and I hated it. I was W-2, and I was at a Fortune 500 company, was making a shitload of money, had a secret security clearance, like living the corporate dream, right? My mom was so proud of me, right? Like I fucking wanted to die. Like I hated it. It made me miserable. And I just realized that I'm trading my freedom and my ability to do what I feel like I need to do throughout the day, my work-life balance, my mental health, for a paycheck. And I never wanted anyone that ever came to work for my company to ever feel like that, right? And that was kind of the fundamentals of what I founded the company on. I want this to be a space that really encourages creativity and collaboration and makes people feel like they have a work-life balance and they're happy to talk to their coworkers and they're happy to do work. There's so much value there that exponentially, in my mind, improves the creativity, right? So it's a win-win. It's just it's the mindset that I've always had, and people that have ever Ross started working for when I hired Ross, I was paying him $200 a month, and then you would get some extra work through that. And it's but it was all about.
I think the first year that I worked for Epic Made, I made $500 for the year. Yeah, it was great.
Well, you loved what I was doing, and the mindset and the way that working here made you feel, and the idea and the vision for all this opportunity that we could create together, right? That's huge.
Yeah. That was one of the most important things for me too, was okay, I'm going down this path and I want to make this a place that I would want to work at too. And at the same time, I see all these people that are going freelance and I'm like, okay, is that why is everybody going freelance exactly? And it's I wonder what I can do to create a really similar freelance experience, but for full-time employees that get benefits and everything. And it was one thing after another where I'm like, okay, well, let's do this now. Let's start adding this. Just last month we were awarded one of Inc.'s best places or best workplaces. And to me, that is one of the coolest things. Because that was the goal, right? To be the kind of place where everyone really enjoys coming into work. And but I mean, like we were saying before, it's I want to make things as easy as I possibly can for everyone on the team, because I can't control personal or family stresses and stuff like that, but I can't control the work stresses in general. And if I can lower that, I generally believe the less stressed you are, the more creative you're going to be. And I've seen it firsthand. Oh wow. But it's something that requires maintenance, right? So even still, I see certain employees that I'm hey, you know what? The last 2 or 3 weeks, it just seems like you've been off. What's going on? Is there something that we need to adjust or change to make it work? More often than not, it's something more personal, and I can't really help that stuff, but at least I can do is listen. And if somebody says you know what, it's just, I'm moving and doing this stuff, I'm why don't you there's different solutions to different problems, but I might say something why don't you take the rest of the day and just focus on that today, and then we'll come back tomorrow. I'd rather you rather than trying to divide your time up this, just take today off and come back tomorrow. But that's one of the hardest parts about being a leader and a business owner. That's what I always talk about. It's there is this constant fight where, as a business owner, yes, I want everyone to work 24 hours a day. And I want to profit as much as I can. But at the same time, again, as a leader now, that balances that out where it's no, these are people, and I want everyone to be happy, because I want to be happy in this environment too.
It affects health too, right? So my wife, so I have a 4-month-old currently.
Nice.
And my wife, prior to being pregnant, she worked in insurance. She did a lot of the legal side of compliance and things like that in insurance. And we we tried to have a kid for like 2 years while she was doing that. And they progressively, I'm not going to say what company, but they progressively ratcheted the constraints. I mean, they were like monitoring bathroom breaks and all sorts of shit from the beginning. And then it basically ratcheted in from there. So, it got to a point where like, it was just, she just couldn't do it anymore. I was like, well, you know, I think I can make it work if you just need to take a break or whatever. You know, she had saved up a decent amount in her 401k, so we're like, we could float for a little while. And the next month she got pregnant. Like,
interesting.
Literally, like 1 month after quitting. It's after 2 years. So like, it really does physically affect you as well. At least I believe that, right? It could have been luck, but I don't think it is. Like
stress, cortisol levels, man, ruin all your health.
The reality of it is like it's hard, not just for creativity. It's hard to give a shit when like you when you're constantly having to fight the system you're working for. Right? Like you're constantly having to resent the system you're working for. You're constantly having to like argue for your own freedoms. That could arguably be analog for politics. You're basically you're trying to justify why you're there while you're there. And that diverts a lot of mental energy that you could be using to actually solve problems. And I think one of the benefits of having a studio like both of ours is that I could tell just by the brief conversation that we've had so far, like the best idea wins, right? Like if somebody needs something, then maybe the process should be adjusted. If not just for that person, then for everyone. It might be a beneficial thing for everybody. And that's really hard to do when you have, 20,000 employees in a corporate empire, right? Like you can't make those adjustments quickly, which is why I think you're starting to see more people who are either freelancing or creating studios like ours with, 15 people. Because we can just say, okay, what does everybody need? And it's not this ridiculous app like you're going to get an entire country's worth of answers. You're going to get, a group of close friends all saying, hey, I can't work in the mornings because I have to take care of my kid, or I can't work at night, or I have to just work, 48 hours for Saturday and Sunday and I need the week off. Look, it's like whatever you need to do to sustain doing your job, whatever doing your job entails at Epic Made, I'm cool with it. I don't really care. You have to be able to do your job. You do your job in communication, and me is part of that. You have to figure that out. But like for the most part, I'm extremely lenient about what you said, what you need to do individually for your process to be creative and to make your life work. Because I agree with you. I think that does facilitate, if not creativity, then at the very least work that you're focused on, right? That you can actually honestly say that you're proud of because you're not having to fight with all the other demons while working on the thing.
Right. And, at the same time, I do have pretty high expectations for the quality of work that we do. So that's right. So I'm like, that's the thing, right? Is that like, you have all the freedoms that you want, as long as we can hit the deadlines that we have set in place, and do the quality of work that I expect. And every single person on the team has that same expectation, and they know that they're going to be challenged all the time. And I think that's what kind of goes back to the whole like corporate structure. Like they want people to work constantly, but they never really challenge them. They want you to be here all the time doing this thing over and over and over and over again. But like, there is no like interest in challenging people to level up their skills and like think about the personal growth of people. Because I always tell, we do reviews every 6 months, and every single time I'm like, where do you see things going in 6 months from now? And if you tell me that, okay, if you're a designer right now and you want to be more on the animation side, cool. If you tell me after 6 months from now that you want to get more into the writing side, like literally like it's a clean slate almost every single time where I'm like, these, like, yes, we need certain roles on the team, but it's like, to think that people do not change is one of the craziest things ever. So it's like trying to figure out a way to adapt roles to people. And like I think it's really confusing for people when they first start on our team because they're like, so like what do I like what do you want me to like do? Like they're like I'm like I have some like free time. I'm like, well, like what is it that you want to do? Like, and it's not like you get to just pick whatever, but it's like you see the stuff that's sort of going on, and like yes, we give out whenever we get a project in, we disperse it amongst people, and like, all right, here you're the primary on this one. But if somebody's like, hey, you know what, like I'd really love to do sound design on this one, and I think I have like half a day that I could do that. I'm like, cool, like let's see it.
Yeah.
And give people a chance to just kind of explore that stuff or find out that maybe that's not for me. Like, oh, okay, like I tried this whole 3D thing. 3D is just too complicated. I'd rather just stay on the 2D side. Like, great, now I know. But if you decide 6 months from now that you want to do 3D again, great, like let's try to figure it out again. But like it's trying to have that kind of personal relationship with everybody. And like you said, you can do that with a 15 or less team. You can't do that with a 5,000 person company.
Right.
Maybe. But when it comes to these like massive companies, I think that you get that way because the easiest way when you can no longer communicate individually in a hub with everybody involved, you have to start treating people like pawns on a chessboard, right? Where like it's not about this person's wants or needs, it's about what space they're moving to and what they're doing, their role as though they're like a line of code or a machine, right? Like I need this thing. It's almost like you remove people from it entirely and you say, okay, these processes need to happen, discounting the fact that people need to do them. And I think that's why you end up with people not getting challenged in those environments, is because they're not removing the humanitarian side of it. They're not being treated as people operationally. They're being treated as an objective operationally. And is the objective complete or is it not complete? Or is the task complete or is it not complete? It doesn't matter how efficient or inefficient. Like, I think that's the big lie in at least present day corporate America. It might have been different in like the 50s, but present day corporate America, like, you don't actually have to try any harder. It won't make any difference. Like the way you move up is by like knowing somebody who can get you to the next ladder rung, right? Like my wife was better at her job than everyone on her team, and she actually got demoted because it just made more sense for her to be in a different department. Like that's like the point where like she was able to she had finished her whole week worth of work in like 2 or 3 days and was just like pretending to work because because they had to, she had to, right? Like because she couldn't ask for more work because there was no more work because the task she was given was expected to be done in a week. When you treat people like that, there's no reason for them to go above and beyond because there isn't anything at the end of the road. You're building it for them as they're walking it. And I think that that's another reason why like especially 2020, when COVID happened, I think the illusion of the perfect American lie of it's safer to have a W-2 job completely went out the fucking window. Like you basically started realizing how flimsy the whole system, right? And how much of a lie. Oh, I have a safer job because I'm employed. I don't have to find my own work. That just means you're at the mercy of whether or not the money dries up, right?
Right.
I think a lot of people started to see that in 2020 when all of the curtains started burning down, and you're a lot safer as a freelancer, even though it's harder because you can find your own money. Like, what was the date?
if you know how to do that.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Fred Siebert. I love quoting Fred. We actually had Fred Siebert, owner of Fred Writer Studios. Dude was a producer on basically every Cartoon Network show ever. He told us something, I can't remember if it was on the podcast or slightly after the podcast or in like a private conversation, but he basically said, if you need to do something, it will get done. Like, but most of the time, especially in creative endeavors, it will only get done if you need it to be done.
Right.
Like if you need to find money and you are a skilled freelancer, you will find money. But you might not if you don't need to. And I think that that's something that a lot of people have realized, is that like when their backs are to the wall, they can just make it work. And it's hard initially, but it gets easier and more secure the more you do it, the more systems you build around it, and the more...
The story of my life.
Yeah.
100%. That's what I was going to say too, is like, that's when I first started. So I went from working full time to deciding to, whenever I moved to Columbus, after I was in Los Angeles for a bit, once I moved to Columbus, I decided, okay, I'll be freelance now. But it was more like a permalance kind of thing, where it was like, all right, I'm in studio still, like working. And at the end of, there were several contracts, but at the end of one of them, they were like, hey, listen, we want you to work full time here. And everyone like was so excited to be able to tell me. And I was like, I'm sorry, that's not what I'm doing here. Like, I need to start my own thing now. And like, it kind of surprised myself, but I was like, I don't want to say this, but like, I don't know, it was like, my heart talking a little bit, I guess, where it was like, no, I'm going to figure this out on my own. And I had money saved up. Not the topic that we were going on here, but there's a story anyway.
Yeah. Context.
In my eyes, I was like, okay, I was working full time and I was working nights and weekends. And I was like, okay, I made like, I don't know, $15,000 nights and weekends outside of my full-time job. So I was like, okay, maybe there's something there. And I think I ended up saving up maybe about $20,000. So
nice.
My wife doesn't work either. She stays home with the kids. I'm only income in the family, and I basically quit my job with nothing at all lined up. Do not necessarily recommend, by the way. Because it definitely led to one of the most stressful things ever. But so my last day of work was like the last week, like right before Christmas maybe. And then January 1st, I like show up in my bedroom with a computer and I'm like, now what do I do exactly? And, that was probably one of the most important things that I ever did, by like taking the leap like that. So, and like you're saying, like when your back's against the wall, it's amazing the things that you figure out. I will say that it's not for everyone. Like I will 100% say that. So like it's not something that I recommend to anyone. But for me, I mean, so yeah, I saved up this $20,000 and I was like, okay, so like we should be fine. Our bills were generally $3,000 to $4,000 a month. So I was like, I got a few months here. In the first, I think, month or two, I made $200. And I was like, this is not the trajectory that's going to be good here. I would say about 1 full year later, I was down to like $1,000 left. And again, our bills are like $3,000. So I'm like, I don't know how to solve this at this point. Like I don't know, just kind of ready to chalk it up to basically being a failure at that point, I guess. And just, we'll try to figure it out. I know I could probably just get a job somewhere else. I'd be fine. But I really enjoyed that year though. It was weird because I'm like, I experienced some of these freedoms and I would rather not go back.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Like I would almost rather go to a different industry altogether than like go back to the same like type of full-time work. Which again, I think plays a big role now because I'm like, all right, I'm hiring full-time people and if they feel that way, then I need to make sure I'm creating a better environment than what they can potentially do on their own. So anyway, the story goes that I went to the library and decided just to like not take my phone in and just write until I figured out what my plan was going to be and how I was going to solve this. And so this was, I think, 2016. And once I walked out of the library probably 6 hours later, and I'm like, okay, I think I figured something out. Like in my sketchbook, I usually drawing, but this time I was just writing, and I filled up like several pages, and I was like, okay, I didn't know I had this in me. I didn't know like I had these ideas, and like I was like, okay, so let's go back to this and let's figure this out. And when I got in the car, I look at my phone, and there's a project request right there for the biggest project that I got to date at that point. And I was like, okay, like,
oh yeah,
man,
but like
destiny.
Right. And that was cool. But I was like, okay, well, I can't let this happen again. Like, again, I have a family here. Like, I can't get our savings account down to $1,000.
Right.
Like, I can't let that happen again. So for me, it was like, let's work on this project. Let's do amazing. But at the same time, I need to do other things. I need to treat this like a company. There are departments that I have to do marketing. I have to do business development.
Right.
And I need to think a lot more about these things. And I just need to think smarter about these things. It wasn't necessarily like, oh, you need to put more time into it. Like, that wasn't it. It was just, you need to be able to focus on the right things at the right time.
It's usually not. Ironically, it's usually not about putting more money into you or more time into something.
Right.
Like, it's really usually about just being more creative and intelligent about something. And it's funny that you got down to like $1,000, because again, it kind of led credence to like what Fred was saying, is that you technically, even though you started free falling at $20,000, you didn't have to make it work until you had you couldn't pay your bill. And I think you're right. It's not for everyone. I also think that creating that situation for yourself isn't the same as being forced into it, right? Like, I don't think that you can just willingly leave not everyone can just willingly leave their job with nothing to their name, and like all of a sudden you're going to get the magic, the magic manifest destiny / a motivation to do this, right? Like, you're not going to just automatically have what it takes in you to do it. You kind of have to slowly get crushed into that situation, I think, and then you find, just like in any story, right? Like, you kind of find it in yourself after the all is lost moment of, that you can do it. I did a similar thing working with Epic Made. I mentioned earlier in the podcast that I made like $1,000 the first year working with Carl, and that's just because realistically, he brought me on as like artist / salesperson.
Nice.
That had come like I was like 23 years old. I was making $70,000 a year at managing a print store, like Print Mobile, and I had my bachelor's degree in animation and illustration, and digital painting. And I was like, and Carl had never even considered selling either of those two things. He was Epic Made was exclusively graphic design at the time. It wasn't even called Epic Made at the time, but I was like, hey, like, we got connected because a client came in who happened to be like Carl's legal advice, and was like, hey, I had a salesperson who owned a sales store for cell phones. I was talking. And I got to letting her know like what I was trying to do with my life for real, and she's like, "Oh, well, I know somebody." Well, Carl and I talked, and he figured out that like it was possible that my career path could be sold, shocker, and that Carl wanted to join this with me, but I would have to basically sell it. I'd have to basically prove to him that department deserved to exist, and so. Having not sold anything to anyone that didn't walk into a physical store prior to this, I basically made $0. Although we did get one project that like in animation that like actually proved that it wasn't a completely stupid idea. But I quit my $70,000 a year job.
Yep.
Free fall. Like I think I had like you said, 10 grand, 15 grand. My bills were a lot less. I think I had like $1,000 a month in bills. I still racked up $20,000 in credit cards before I started to like actually make any tangible money. Like I've since paid all that off. So like I can't say it wasn't worth it. But for a long time, I had a minimum of like $10,000 in debt because I had decided to do this. So definitely not for everybody.
Right.
Like most people don't they can't control their spending or their like the way that they want to live their life. They can't adjust in a way that like compensates for that.
Right.
And so they'll spend the money that they don't have on top of the money that they're not bringing in, and you'll get into a hole very quickly. And I think that I was young enough for it to work, and I was motivated enough for it to work, and I had the right environment. But overall, I think it is something you should consider. It's something that anyone who's stuck in the situation that like, hey, should I make this change? You maybe need to go to a library without your phone for 6 hours and see if you can actually figure it out, like for real, and don't bullshit yourself and like don't. I'm a big I'm a big fan of reluctantly not looking at my finances because I'm scared of them. Like I know I've spent too much money this month. I don't want to look at this. I'm just gonna wait until the end of the month and do the blood math after that. But not like that. But like really take a hard look at like what money you have, what your costs are, and like figure it out. But
this is it's really interesting that you like kind of bring that stuff up, because like to me it was like during that time right there. I mean, even probably a little bit before that, like I'm all about living as frugally as possible. I came from a family that was like that. We weren't like poor, but we didn't have really anything extra. So it was like you'll be able to eat, but occasionally the power might go out. Like that's how my childhood was.
Sure.
And for me, it was like, all right, when I go through these things, like when it comes to money, even still right now, I'm like the numbers, they do not lie. So it's like, to me, that was one of the things, like going to the library, I'm like, all right, like what can we cut? And like even the bills that we had, I'm like, this is basically our mortgage and school loans and like insurance.
Mm-hmm.
That's like I don't think that I've ever had any credit card debt, or I don't know, truthfully, any debt outside of a car occasionally in my house. But like I've always just been so afraid of like borrowing money and stuff like that. But that's the thing, like when I get to that point of I have $1,000 left, I'm like, I don't have any other like options. Do I need to like get a credit card for the first time at the age of like 25, 26? I don't remember what I was. But the thing is though, like after going through that experience and sort of like realizing how I need to be smarter, I don't know. So going from $1,000 in a bank account to, I want to say it was 4, maybe 5 years later, we're a 7-figure company. And it was all because of that time and trying to figure out, okay, what do I have to do next? What do I have to do next? And again, getting back to the beginning thing, it was like kind of adjusting process along the way and trying to figure out how to do things the best way we can that leads to the best work that we can possibly do. And again, money has never truly been like a big driving factor for me. And like, so that's why I love to hear the story of like, yeah, I left the $70,000 job. I left a $90,000 job. But like, I get it. I know what that's like. You feel so stupid at first.
Dude, my mom gave me shit for like 4 years. And I lied to my wife on the first day of our honeymoon. Like, yeah, 3 months of work, lied. I had no savings. Like, I was just like, I can't fucking go back to this job. I'm going to kill myself. So, anyways, yeah.
I don't know. It's cool though. Like when you can get through things like that, like that's where the confidence, I guess, comes from, of like, I can get through anything.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, maybe it sounds really arrogant, but at the same time, like there's always something that you can do. There's a lot of things that are out of your control, but there's some things that you can do. Yeah.
Absolutely, man. And like, I love that because this happens to me and Ross, to us all the time. And Ross and I have this thing like the universe wants us to succeed, right? Like, and that's just like, and it's like every time we get it, like our back against the wall for any number of reasons, like, oh my God, we need a thing here, or we need more money, or we need, it's like, if we put enough energy and just pure fucking willpower into it, like you come back from the library and check your phone after 6 hours and you have the biggest project you've ever seen, right? Like, that happens to us all the time. And I read a book called, and I know we're way over time now. I read a book called The Secret a long time ago, and it's, I don't know, it's a little like woo woo, but like if you really like put your whole self into manifesting ideas and visualizing and planning and strategizing, it comes together. Like it's just crazy. There's some magic to it.
There's another book called The Secret. I'm pretty sure it's called that. This guy made this a series of paintings that were like, sorry, I know we're going over still. A series of paintings that are in this book that is basically treasure maps to lead all over the country. Look that up.
Okay.
It's cool stuff.
Sounds awesome.
Anyway, I thought that's where you were going, but I was like, nope.
That's super cool. And like, I think everyone's mentioned at this point, we are out of time. We're coming up on time. So before we wrap up, we do have one last question for you, Matt. Same question we ask every guest. Is there anyone or anything in your career that you'd like to shout out to the audience? Might be a peer, or a ally in the creative world, or maybe it's a resource that you and your team use. Just something for the audience to kind of look at beyond this call.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that come to my mind, but I think the one that comes up first is the art director on our team. Her name's Melissa Lee Johnson. She is, we talked about just hiring people. We hired her maybe 3 years ago, something around there. And she is very far on the creative side on the artist side while I'm on the engineering side of things. And she is an amazing illustrator. I recommend everyone checking her work out. She's helped with a lot of little internal projects that we've had along the way, but she's also been heavily involved in just a lot of design, live action, animation, like pretty much whatever kind of project. But yeah, she does good work. Check her out.
Thanks so much, man.
Love it. Cool. And shout out to Greg. Where's my script? What's Greg's last name? Help me.
Walter.
What was that?
Walter.
Yeah, there it is. Greg Walter with Too Tall for introducing us. Amazing human being. So I just wanted to give him a little shout out, share the love there.
So guys, we've been talking with Matt Vojacek, who is the founder and creative director of Made by Things. You can check out the website at madebythings.com. If listeners want to follow up with you directly, Matt, where should they go?
LinkedIn.
Cool. Good.
All right, Matt, thanks so much for being on the show. And until next time, friends, we'll see you soon.
Thanks for having
me. We really hope you enjoyed the show. Please like and subscribe to join us on our next journey through the world of art and business on the Pixel Retentive Podcast.